ICQ Podcast Episode 441, UK Hamfest 2024 Part 2. Well, hello fellow amateur and radio enthusiasts, and welcome to this, our 441st episode of the ICQ Amateur and Radio Podcast, supported as always by our monthly and annual subscription donors. In this episode, we join Martin M1MRB, Chris Mike Zero Tango Charlie Hotel, Martin Mike Zero Sierra Golf Lima, Frank Kilo 4 Foxtrot Mike Hotel, and Bill Whiskey Charlie 3 Bravo to discuss the latest amateur and radio news. Myself, Colin M6BLY, rounds up the news in brief, and this episode's feature is the second half of our report for the UK Hamfest held in Newark in the Midlands of the UK. Well, as always, it's your very kind donations that keep the ICQ podcast advert free and produced for you every fortnight. And we'd ask you to follow a very simple process. If you find value in the show today, some valuable information, etc., you may have missed, or you couldn't get to the UK Hamfest, or just generally found our review of the news insightful, we ask you to go to icqpodcast.com/donate, where say you can send a monetary value to us to help us, keep us advert free, keep our running costs under control, and certainly help your ICQ podcast grow. So please do consider showing your value for your show today. Right now, we're going to join Martin, Chris, Martin, Frank, and Bill to discuss and generate thoughts about the latest amateur ham radio news, including an incredible ham rescue story and a new ham radio technology competition announced. As always, hope you enjoy.
Well, hi guys, and welcome to this episode of the ICQ Podcast, episode 441, and tonight's roundtable for that episode. Tonight, I'm joined by Mr. Chris Howard, M0TCH. Hi, Chris.
Hi, Martin. Hi, guys.
Hi, Chris. Good to have you with us. And I didn't get a chance to speak to you much Monday night at the club. It was a bit busy, but we'll have a bit more of an hour today.
We will, yeah.
Also, my side of the pond, we have Mr. Martin Rothwell, M0SGL. Hi, Martin.
Hello. How you doing?
Pretty good, and you don't sound like Barry White like you did a month ago.
Oh, very white. Yeah, I did really sound really awful last month, so I wasn't here. But yeah, my cold is still here, but my throat has more or less recovered.
That's good news.
I blame the London Underground for spreading the germs.
Probably. Right, I'm going to move to the other side of the pond. We have Mr. Frank Howell, K4FMH. Hi, Frank.
Hey, Martin. Hey, everybody. Good to be here today.
Yeah, good to have you, Frank. And along with Frank, we have Mr. Bill Barnes, WC3B. Hi, Bill.
Good evening, everybody.
Yeah, good evening to you.
Good evening.
Yeah, he's not with us tonight.
I know, I'm sad. I didn't get my monthly funny story.
Well, we can work on that. Can
you hear me? Can you hear me? Sorry.
Yeah, well, I can hear you.
Martin, can we just put a credit in at the front just to voice over the part of Leslie Butterfield will be played by Bill Barnes.
Yeah, you probably could. But
we could, but Chris did a better job than me this month.
All right.
Oh, thank you. It's very kind.
Okay.
Yes.
So what you guys realised after all that is Miss Leslie Butterfield, G0CIB, is not with us tonight, but he'll be back for the next one. So there you go. Now, our first news story, this really is, I like this one because it really does put us in a good light. An incredible amateur radio rescue story. A gentleman that came across a road traffic accident, I believe, and there was no phone signal anywhere nearby. But with an ham radio set, he managed to make contact. Frank, what's your thoughts on this one?
You're absolutely spot on, Martin. It's a wonderful example of when amateur radio sort of saves the day. Greg Owen, WX7Z, heard a call put out by Ed K7ELC on our national simplex frequency, 146.52. 51-year-old man who had rolled over his four-wheeler. And in Idaho, there are a lot of four-wheel vehicles because of the terrain. And it's a low population density state and area where he was. So we sometimes moan, oh, no one listens to Simplex anymore. Well, thank goodness that there was at least one listening, because he was able to call and get medical service for this individual. And it was quite a trauma. I'll let some of the other presenters go over that, but this was a real example of saving the day and putting on Superman's cape for this pair of ham radio operators.
Yeah, certainly sounded like it, Frank. Bill, still your side of the pond, so we'll go to you next. What's your thoughts on it?
Yeah, the interesting part of this to me is they did mention there that the call was made on 146.52, which is the National Simplex calling frequency. And they talked about the old, and this is a name I haven't heard in a long time, Wilderness Protocol. But, I mean, all my radios that I have on 2 meters, I all have, the Simplex frequency programmed in the scan list. And as I'm scanning the channels around, I listen just in case somebody makes a call. Sometimes it's, folks trying to get a contact, distance contact maybe on 2 meters, but sometimes it's folks that need help. I was recently at the Great Smoky Mountain National Park, and I had three frequencies I programmed in there. One was in the 5.2, of course, is Simplex calling frequency, and the 2 local repeaters that were supposed to give good coverage for that area. I made sure before I went, I had that stuff available just in case where we were did not have cell service. Luckily enough that I didn't run into any issues, but man, it was very comforting to know that I had the radio charged up in my backpack, ready to go just in case as we were hiking. And just another part of the story too is that if you hear somebody calling, check in, because you might be the one that gets the call emergency services for this person. And that's what happened here, is that the man was injured, no cell phone service, called in while he was tending the injuries, and got another amateur to call in emergency services, and they actually had to send a helicopter out to get him, it looks like. So this is a really, really important safety story, and I'm glad you shared it with us.
Yeah, as I say, Colin, Chris and myself spent time on the road in yours and Frank's lovely country. We did 2,000 odd miles. And I'll be honest with you, a large portion of that, I had my radio on the calling frequency. Didn't hear much, but it was a bit more comforting to me anyway. What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, this Wilderness Protocol, it's the first time I've heard of that. It seems to be perhaps a US thing. Of course, here in the UK, the calling frequency is different. It's 145.500, but I guess the principle is the same. Looking at this, it talks about listening listening at the top of the hour for 5 minutes, which actually sounds quite similar to what happens with ships. And when we used to operate in HMS Belfast, there was a clock in the radio room there which had indications on there when it was supposed to for listening, so not for normal traffic, but to listening for any emergency traffic. So it sounds quite a similar concept to how ships used to work. I guess nowadays they have much more modern technology, satellites and that sort of thing. But back in those days, it was top of the hour, and I think every quarter of an hour, I think there was a slot for listening, and just in case there was somebody out there that couldn't quite get through and they were having a problem. So this is quite interesting. And of course, this talks about if you're outside of a repeater range. I think if you were within range of a repeater, you're probably going to have more luck in finding someone than you are on Simplex. But if you're not, then that's the place to be. So yes, very lucky that there was somebody able to pick up the signal and be able to help. So and it sounds like actually it was quite a serious injury the person had. It talks about broken collarbone, head trauma, broken ribs, etc. So not a nice situation. So it's good that the guys are able to help.
Oh yeah, and let's say that's quite worrying with that amount of injury. Martin, you any thoughts on this one?
I got a few. I mean, this is it's an incredible story. The guy uses radio where there's no phone service. And I always wonder how the phone companies still say they've got 99% coverage. I don't understand that, how they've got that kind of coverage. And they're all number one in the same market. I know we've had a few stories like this in the past. I mean, there was one in Cornwall a couple of years ago, I think, when the 999 operator didn't initially understand why they were getting a call from someone out of the area. But in this case, glad the 911 operator was able to help quickly. And it shows that when all else fails amateur radio, I carry my radio in my bag literally all the time. It comes with me to work. It comes with me when we go out. And I'm often in areas when I have no signal. We go to places like National Trust places. These are like areas of natural beauty and places like that don't have cell towers. They're miles from anywhere. And we often find ourselves with no signal. So I have it with me, PMR channels, so we can keep in contact. But I do listen on the subband. In the UK, it's not official, but there was something I found on a forum that said listen to 446 Channel 8 because people have, you can just buy those radios quite cheaply from all over the place. So I do listen to that. I also listen to 2 Me's. It's nice. I've never had to use it in anger, but it is nice to know that it's there. And in this case, the guy obviously had his radio, thought to have it in his bag. Well, why not? He had it locally. It was charged up. So good on him.
Yeah. Well, in fairness, that's a good piece of work, guys. And let's hope that let's wish the gentleman who had the accident a speedy recovery, back to more normality from us at the podcast. Right, let's move to our next news story. And here, I believe there is a simulated emergency test scheduled during October. Now, I have it as the 5th and 6th, but when I was talking to Frank earlier, he said, well, different states do it on different days. But having a scheduled emergency test, I think it's a good thing. I'm going to give it to Bill first this time. What do you think, Bill?
Yeah, I didn't participate that weekend. Our local one is later in the month. I'm just scanning my email here to see. I think they said it's the 22nd or 29th. Ours is in coordination with a drill hosted by one of the local electric companies for their nuclear power plant in the area. And that also is, run through not only local counties that are in the area around the nuclear site. It's also the Pennsylvania Emergency Management Agency too. So this is an annual event. A lot of folks help out. But likewise, this event that the article he sent was for a couple weekends ago. And that is the ARRL's simulated emergency test. It's the ARRL's primary national emergency exercise that they do with the Amateur Radio Emergency Service, which we abbreviate ARES. So they had that, and we will see how it went. And usually there's after action reports, and we get to see things that they recommend. One thing I can say just personally is if you participate in this stuff, you should, check your equipment that you have in your deployment bag or go kit or go box, and depending on how you do it. I check mine every quarter. In fact, I'll check mine here. I usually do it 2 times a year. I do it when the time changes, and the other 2 times I do it like around the summer and winter solstice. So it's not evenly spaced out, but it's times that I always seem to remember that, change the batteries and things like the smoke detectors, and, change the batteries in the HTs I have, and, top off and make sure and check the LiPo 4 battery that I have for the radios and stuff. And, just make sure things are okay. So if you need them, they're ready to go.
Well, that sounds good, Bill. Sounds like you got it well under control there. Frank, still your side of the pond. Do you take part in this?
Martin, I have our statewide set. As people will know, our listeners will certainly know, after Katrina, Mississippi really ramped up MCOM, our state emergency management agency got a state-of-the-art war room basically set up there. It's a little bit like NASA that you don't see back in the days of space launches. And I've worked in that as well. We tend to do fairly well in terms of how each section scores the different things. Our state MCOM director for our ARL program, Robert Hayes, works for a company, L3 Communications, and they do a lot of contract work with the Department of Defense. So Robert is sort of a professional in his day job, and we're fortunate to have him to do this. And he will come up with a fictitious scenario. It's not always the same emergency, and different areas, groups try to attack that problem using their resources as a group, to deal with it. Now, back during COVID, it was tough because we had to do it all virtually when we did the set. And that pushed us even further to get virtual MCOM situations working. And that actually proved to be a benefit, I believe. And so I have participated in this both through a team as well as from home, and have operated as net control for a segment and stuff like that. So been involved with it. It's good for the ARL, National Aries Program, does this. It unfortunately, not all of us are kind of like Bill, where he's got a schedule where he checks things better than most, I would say, including me. And we wouldn't do it if we didn't have these things. So it's good that ARL takes a little leadership with this. And I will say that their relatively new Director of Emergency Management, Josh Johnson, KE5MHV, he's from Arkansas, and he is really doing, I think, a much better job for ARL at headquarters than has been done in the past. So I'd tip my hat to Josh on that.
Well, that's good news, Frank. That's good news. And seems like, okay, you guys have worse disasters than we do, touching wood very quickly. But, I say, seems like it's worth doing. Martin, what's your thoughts on this one?
Do you know what? I'm not going to pretend I understand the ins and outs of it in its full details, but I think it's great that people are doing like emergency testing, knowing what to do in the case of the emergency, understand the procedures and everything you need to go through, especially in America. Obviously, amateur radio and stuff is relied on a lot more in the case of emergencies for hurricanes and what have you. But my question is, if you're doing an emergency test, and okay, we're talking about this on a podcast now, but and you can put all these things in your magazines and your amateur radio publications and things like that, but not everybody, let's face it, not everybody listens to the show, not everybody reads the magazines. Is there a risk somewhere that someone is going to hear this emergency test and think it's real and then cause some amount of panic, or they're going to I'll call the emergency services for you?
All messages start with a preamble and a postamble.
Right.
The ones that I'm familiar with is this is a or this is an exercise message, and then you end with this has been an exercise message.
So someone has thought
there's no War of the Worlds scenario here.
Yeah. So they always. I really don't want to get into the weeds, but we use the National Incident Management System pretty much across the whole country now, using an incident command structure. And we have all these forms that have been developed, and the one I'm familiar with is the multiple FEMA forms. And it's stamped right on there when it's an exercise that, in the message text, you put in this is an exercise message, start and finish, so that if anyone's casually observing, they'll know that this is a test, an exercise, not the real thing.
So someone has actually thought this through then. So I guess that answers my question then.
Yeah. Once again, without getting too deep, after the events of September 11th, 2001, when the federal government and the state governments were looking at what went well and what went badly, the incident command system and the National Incident Management System is the net result of all that study and time. So they formalized a scalable organizational structure. And around that, they built protocols that you need to know to even volunteer to help with this stuff so that you're not doing something inappropriately at a sensitive time.
Well, hopefully that answered your question, Martin.
Absolutely it does. Yeah, sorry, I was just going for the unmute button. It absolutely does. So, yeah, thank you.
Chris, have we left you anything to say on this one?
Not a lot. Obviously, we don't have this in the UK. I'm not aware. We might have, but I'm not aware that we do. Thankfully, we haven't been through a 9/11 in the UK, I suppose, and we don't necessarily have the same scale of incidents that, weather-wise, etc., and disaster-wise that you perhaps get in the US. We've had a few floods and that sort of thing, but I don't think we've had the major hurricanes and earthquakes and sort of natural disasters and things that you get in the States. Perhaps that's why we haven't perhaps in the need to have this. But and also we don't, geographically we're very different. We're a much smaller country. But it does look like a very good idea, as you were saying, Bill, just to sort of make sure everything's still working. The battery's flat, on your radio. Does that aerial still work? It's definitely worth, because you guarantee if you don't do that, the minute you need to do that, something's not going to work. So actually now and again, just testing things out is a very good idea. So I think this is a great idea. And even though they are well prepared, hopefully they won't need to actually use those skills. But definitely worthwhile doing.
Certainly is. And the thing is, the more you practice this, hopefully you'll never have to use it, but the more you practice this, the more effective you'll be if you had to use it. So I think it's a good thing that exercises happen. Moving to our next news story, the World Radio Sports Team Championship and the World Radio League have announced a partnership to try and give some extra online information to contests. Chris, I'm going to let you go first on this one. What do you think on this?
So the WRL, the World Radio League, was something, despite Frank's recent interview with one of the organisers, wasn't really that aware of. So I have actually, as we were reading the news story earlier, I did actually sign up, and it's actually quite a fun thing. It's a website. It's very interactive. It lets you log contacts. It's quite visual. It shows you sort of on a globe. It shows you what's going on in terms of QSOs that it's aware of. It kind of gives another aspect to amateur radio, which is quite cool. And I think actually linking this up with the World Radio Team Sport Championship might just give it a visual aspect rather than just seeing like maybe a scoreboard or hearing on the air lots of contacts going on. It may actually just give it a bit more of a visual thing to look at. It might be quite fun seeing the way that they're presenting the data is quite interesting. So I think it might be. I think this is a good idea. I think it's going to, like I said, give a different experience perhaps to those that are observing what's going on.
Yeah, I agree with Chris, because we're now in a digital age anyway, and youngsters coming into our hobby, if they can see instant gratification, if it's a bit, they call it team sport. Frank and I might have had a discussion whether it's sport or a game, and I'm sure Frank will tell you about this in a while. But by making it more visual for new people coming into this hobby, it's got to be a good thing. What do you think, Martin?
Well, I'm sort of looking at this, and I'll be honest, I can't say I've heard of the World Radio League, although I've just, like Chris, I've just looked at their website, worldradioleague.com, and there's a lot of things like easy to use logging interface and things like this. And I had a feeling one of the Camhams was involved in a similar project. I might be wrong on that. Don't quote me on that. But first glance, if I saw this, is this the same product? I don't know. New live contesting technology platform to bring exciting live experience to ham radio. E-sport, debatable. I class sport as a physical exercise, but that's another story. I'm all in favour of promoting amateur radio. I am very much against more contests on the band. There are too many of them, and I know this will be an unpopular thing among many, but it is my opinion. There are too many people hogging the bands at the weekend. Too many people shouting 5-9 next. I mean, do we really need more contests? I'm I think I'm indifferent about this.
Yeah. I mean, I know you're not a big contester, and neither am I. But there is anything that can excite people or generate a bit more interest, I think, into our hobby is good. And this might help the youngsters come in and see what our hobby's all about. They then might decide they're not interested in contests. Who knows? But it's a move forward. And the World Radio League are doing other things, not just this exercise with the WRTC. So I'm going to pass it to Frank next again. Frank, you interviewed the chairman a couple of episodes back in a feature, and there's a lot going on there. I feel confident about them.
I did. James Cribbs, KN4NEH, is the CEO and founder of World Radio League. He's also the founder of the company Ham Radio Prep, which is online courses, to train you to get your FCC license here in the U.S. And so listeners who perhaps missed my feature on the Huntsville Ham Fest might want to go back and listen to that, because we talked a bit about what is the World Radio League. They only began in 2023. So they are a legitimate company. I get the sense that making money is second to providing a good product and engaging. So I was pleased with that. But let me comment a couple of things about this. As a sociologist, one of the things that we study when you have groups is what are the common resources that members of the group use. And Martin Rothwell just raised a really critical issue. And it's not a right or wrong issue. It's simply a competition for scarce resources, is access to frequencies and bands. And certainly contests have been the shining example over the last number of decades over organized ham radio activity. And there are times where, as Martin said, it's 5-9 next, 5-9 next, go away. We're the California QSO party, go away. We own the frequency. They don't say that, but you get my point here. And so there are people who don't do contesting who are rightly put off because they don't get as access at the time they want it to that relatively scarce resource. Now, number two, one of the friends of the show, Dr. Scott Wright, K0MD, and I, a few years ago, published data on 20 years of the ARL sweepstakes contesting data. And I dare say it was kind of the most sophisticated study of its type, certainly that I've seen. Well, we looked at individual contest participants over a 20-year period and had ARL share match birth dates. And so we calculated age, et cetera, et cetera. And there was a couple of key findings for that. And it's important to this because we've got the baby boomers who are moving rapidly toward infirmity or silent key status. Now, this study is on my blog at foxmikehotel.com if you want to look at it. And so what's happening with contesting is it's changing demographically. Young people are not going into the CW aspects of it. There's just very little new contesters in the sweepstakes operating CW. The new ones are going into phone. Well, what does that tell us? That we don't have digital stuff there. The real success of the ARL digital contest, it's only 2 or 3 years old, tells us some of that. The national study that I did for Radio Amateurs of Canada shows, almost shockingly, as we've talked about on this podcast before, is how much more digital activity is reported than CW activity. Now, not to kick CW around here, just pointing out how, as Martin Butler said, contesting is changing just as amateur radio is changing. Not everybody will be happy campers over this World Radio League esport model of engaging people, but they might be engaging younger segments of ham radio, at least here in the States, to participate in contesting whether some of us who aren't ardent contesters or not appreciate the use of the band. So have I muddied the water completely, Martin?
No, I don't think so, Frank. And I know, well, potentially you're talking to the World Radio League about something else for later in the year, maybe next year. So they seem a reasonable bunch of people that are able to.
And it is public. They will be hosting our Libraries on the Air effort, which won't be a contest, which won't even be like POTA, but it will be an organized way to present ham radio to library patrons. So you're absolutely correct. Do have that time. And that's in that interview a couple episodes ago for the Huntsville Ham Fest.
Yeah. So, Bill, have we left you anything to say on this one?
Yes, kinda.
Well, that's good.
First off, I gotta say, M0SGL, you're 5'9" in the Fox Nancy 10 QRZ contest.
Next.
Anyway, so I have a different view on contesting, not because I do partake in contests a few times a year, but more along the lines of it keeps the bands busy on the weekends. There is a lot, and I don't think many people really realize there is a lot of commercial cellular interests that are just bandwidth starved. They are looking for bandwidth anywhere they can get it. The latest one we saw was somebody wanted to take a chunk of the amateur radio and ISM band here. What was it, Frank? 915 megahertz?
Yeah, I think so.
And they want to take a little bit of the 23 SEMS band. They want to take some of the bands right around the ISM bands for 2.4 and 5 gig wireless, which that's an industrial, scientific, medical license-free band that we also have privileges on. We can use more power. Just read something the other day about 6G's coming, and they're looking at 7 gigahertz, which I'm not familiar with what's up there. But there is so many commercial interests that just begging just bandwidth wherever they can get it. So the idea that we keep using the bands so that a regulator doesn't sit somewhere in the world and go, oh, they're not using that 20 meter band. Let's give that to these people who are going to give us money. So I think contesting has a very important utility use in keeping the bands busy. And a lot of people will argue with me on that. And I understand your point of view, but from my point of view is at this particular point in history of amateur radio, all usage is valid and good usage as long as the bands are busy. Now back to the article, I was completely unaware of the World Radio League. I'm going to have to do a little more reading into it. I've been following Radio Sport 2.0, which that's the thing that I was on a call. It was on YouTube. I'm not exactly sure how. It was right after Dayton, I think, with Kyle A0Z. And he's been working with a lot of folks. The two that I think of is like Sebastian KI2D and Alan K7AKG. I know they're doing stuff. I saw a note last month, Smitty Halibut, is hooking them up with some development server space. And so there's multiple explorations right now on things that we can do to make contesting more real time, more gamified, more interesting. Which I don't think that's a bad idea. I think that's a good idea, and we should have multiple development tracks so that we figure out which ideas work the best, which ideas are scalable. I jokingly have said to folks in the past, but I'm actually serious. I mean, I would pay money to watch K3LR contests for a little while on a weekend just to see what techniques he uses. Same thing with other successful ones. I would watch a Twitch stream of somebody contesting in a contest I wasn't working in just to try to learn something new on as far as technique and skills. So I think there's a lot of possibility here. But more importantly is the fact that WRTC is going to be in Great Britain in 2026, and that is a very, very exciting event. Every 4 years, the World Radio Sport Team Championship. It is incredibly fascinating. They set up similar stations in a similar location under similar conditions, and so it's more operator skill than anything else. Very fascinating. I just can't wait to see that kicked off. I mean, they're working on getting it right. I mean, the actual event when they start bringing the teams in. Teams are qualifying now. They're doing contests now, and the aggregate scores, not aggregate. Frank, help me. It's a weighted.
Yeah, it's a weighted index, I think.
That's the word, index. It's a weighted index, and you have to hit a certain cutoff to even be qualified for this.
It's like golf. You have to make the cut.
Correct. You have to make multiple cuts. And so I think this is this part is very exciting, and anything that they're going to do to get a more digital presence with this, I think is a really good development change.
Yeah, I think you're right, Bill. And, it can only be an advantage if two groups are working together on this in partnership. A lot of amateur radio is often, it's mine and I'm not sharing it with anybody, which annoys me intensely. So seeing two organisations working together on a project, to me, is a big tick in the box. Okay, move to our next news story. A balloon to take a ham payload aloft in South Africa. When I looked at this looks really, really interesting. Martin, I haven't given you a first go yet. What's your thoughts?
I'm quite excited when I'm reading this. There's not very much details about it at the moment on the website link that we've got here. Seems to just go to a Newsline article which has got very limited information. But it does look like this balloon will have crossband repeat, LoRa systems, APRS trackers, parrot repeaters, Whisper, and SST. How big is this thing, SSTV as well? Be interesting to see more on it. Apparently it's a CubeSat. It's going to remain aloft in a hydrogen fill until the hydrogen-filled balloon that it's in bursts and it comes back to Earth via parachute, launching from somewhere near Secunda, coordinated by the Secunda Radio Club. And it's known as BACAR 12, the acronym standing for Balloon Carrying Amateur Radio. Quite original. So, yeah, interesting stuff. I've got a big bottle of helium in my garage, and I've got some balloons. I could tape a bow fang to the bottom of it and see what it does. So if you see a big pink balloon floating up with happy birthday written on the side and a bow fang taped to the bottom, you know what it is. But yeah, I'm excited to know more.
It's a bit more than a bow fang, Martin, but it's a CubeSat, but yeah.
No, my version would be a bow fang because I can't afford to put anything else up.
Yeah. But it's interesting how in the past we've launched them out of, or amateurs have had them launched out of the International Space Station. But if you can send a balloon up and keep the little CubeSat aloft for a sufficient amount of time before the balloon bursts, that might be a cheap way of putting them up there. And I'm quite excited about that. Chris, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm just looking. Well, this actually has already happened. It was the 12th of October. So I thought I'd do a quick Google of that BACAR 12, BACAR, like you say, balloon carrying amateur radio, just to see if there's an update on what happened. And actually, this seems like it's a regular thing. So there was another one of these flights happening on the 16th of November. And they're saying that will be the 12th flight on that date. So it looks like it's happened a few times. And it looks like it takes a series of CubeSats up there, weighing no more than 500 grams each. They're sort of strung together under the balloon, and then up it goes. And it sounds like they're having some good fun and sort of experimenting with some different payloads, things like APRS trackers and SSTV and Whisper beacons and all kinds of stuff, parrot repeaters, cross-band repeaters. So, yeah, I don't know how long the flight, if that's the right term, lasts for. It must take quite some time. It does get pretty high, and it must take quite a while to come back to Earth if it's got a parachute on it. I guess they try to retrieve where it. In fact, it says here there's a chase team that goes to retrieve them once they've come back to Earth. So hopefully they can find them. I guess they've got beacons and things on them that can help to find where they are. But it looks like it's a lot of fun, and I imagine it's quite satisfying, because obviously at that sort of altitude, you're going to get a huge coverage. He talks about kind of getting to the edge of space, so that's going to have a huge footprint, in terms of RF that it can reach. So it looks like it's an interesting thing they're doing there in South Africa.
Certainly sounds like it. And while you guys were talking, I'm thinking, if you can get a balloon to take it up almost into space, you only need some form of little propulsion unit, probably to put it in orbit. A small rocket or a booster just to push it up that little bit extra. But there you go. On that one, that quite gets to me. Frank, what's your thoughts on this one?
Oh, Martin, but the extra paperwork to put it in orbit, my. You're correct from a technical point of view. We've had some experience with this. Over in Huntsville, Alabama, Dr. Brown is sort of thought of as the godfather of these type of balloon launches, and he's been doing that for years. Here locally in Ridgeland, we had a middle school teacher who was a ham, who used to do this with his robotics class, and he'd blend in amateur radio, and he had a ham station there and had a Hustler vertical outside the classroom, and had a pretty good program going. He retired and is teaching at a private school, and so he's no longer doing that. But my wife and I put a few dollars in to support some of his balloon launches, and I went out on one morning to watch the launch, and one of the presenters asked, how big are these? Well, this particular balloon, it depends on where you want it to go and how long you want it to stay up. This one was designed to go up and to reach a certain altitude approximately, and then burst and then come back down. Some of the micro balloons that W5KUB, Tom up in Memphis, has put up, they're very small balloons, and they're designed to get to a certain orbit and just stay there. And Tom has had balloons that have traversed the globe many times. What's interesting is many of them will pass South Africa. Many of them use Whisper for tracking, although you don't get the coverage sometimes. And APRS has been there, but then you get over the ocean, you don't have a digipeater. So they've been experimenting with different ways of tracking them. But the balloon launch that I witnessed personally, it was a fairly large balloon, and the wind would make it move a good bit. And there's a lot of logistics to keep that thing so it doesn't burst before it gets off the ground, because the wind can turn it over on gravel, prick the balloon. So there's just a whole lot of organization that goes with that. I was rewarded with some beautiful pictures from the other side of clouds as it went up, and they gave me a Bill, you may have to help me. What are the things where the little coins where you geocaching? That's it, right? I was awarded with my own geocaching coin by the group there for our financial support. But they did neat things with it. Middle school kids went, here's the pressure. Will popcorn pop when you put it in space? And so on. So this is a really neat thing. I'm excited, along with the rest of the presenters, about South Africa getting into this and just doing the plethora of different kinds of payloads and our type of tinker toys that, hey, let's try this and that kind of things. Bravo on them.
Certainly is, Frank. And as somebody who did actually once get a ride in a hot air balloon and go nowhere near as high as this is going to have, it's a glorious experience. If ever you get offered, grab it with both hands. Bill, have we left you anything else to say on this one?
No, I think everyone covered it really well. And I don't think there's anything to add other than I'm really glad that they're doing these kind of experiments with the students.
Yeah. Well, sorry, we probably muscled you out. I'm going to let you go first the next one there, Bill, just to be fair on this one. Ham radio respond to the second hurricane in the southern US. You guys have had a real kicking from a couple of hurricanes that have gone through. Do you want to comment?
Yeah. Oh, there's so much to talk about here. I'm not even sure where to start. I was vacationing in Tennessee when Hurricane Helene went through. We were okay. A couple days. There was various road closings due to water on the roads, but our northeast, the whole area was destroyed. It's just mind-boggling how much damage there was. In fact, the last day we went over to the national park, a lot of the roads at the national park were closed due to downed trees or other kinds of water damage. So it was quite an event, and we don't have them very often, but they're pretty devastating when they do happen. I did spend the next week listening to the Mount Mitchell repeater. It was on Broadcastify. I was listening to it off and on just to kind of snoop in on the emergency traffic, and it was exactly the kinds of things that you would think happened or would need to happen or that you trained. There was a lot of health and welfare checks, and they referred them to the appropriate agency to take care of. There was a lot of requests for aid, and they referred them to the appropriate agency. So a lot of traffic was passed. Friend of ours, I'm sure Frank will talk about, Thomas Witherspoon, was in the middle of this North Carolina side of the mess, and he's put up some very good blog posts. And I'll just mention that, and we'll have a link on the ICQpodcast.com to his blog. But there was a lot of stuff that happened there with that. And then just shortly thereafter, maybe what was it, a week or two, Hurricane Milton took a trip across Florida. So, disclosure time, I listen to our podcast. I listen to Linux and the Ham Shack podcast. I listen to the Workbench podcast, and I also listen to 100 Watts and a Wire. And if you haven't listened to Christian's port from Hurricane Milton, he's okay, but it was very interesting that he was recording some stuff while he was in the eye of the hurricane. Kind of spooky sounding to me, at least. So that was very interesting. But the whole article that you sent here from where you got this from really just points out in the first 72 hours, amateur radio was pretty much it in some of these locations. Likewise, even in that first week, AT&T won the Homeland Security FEMA grant for the cellular and
FirstNet.
They didn't even, FirstNet, and I have yet to hear how long it took for FirstNet coverage to get turned on and up and available for the emergency operation responders. I will be interesting to read that document when it comes out as an after action item for these two hurricanes. I am aware from media reports that FirstNet was available in some locations pretty quickly, but I was wondering how it was, because this was such a large, wide area, how that actually worked out. Likewise, even though in my mind I keep saying to myself, 72 hours, that's when response usually happens in the country. Listening to that Mount Mitchell repeater, that net ran for over a week and a half, pretty much, daily. So it took quite some time to get resources in there. And from some of the photos that we're seeing coming out of the area now, I mean, their whole towns are completely destroyed, and it's going to take a long time to recover. So it's good that we had amateur radio operators in the area. It's good that they were able to help, but at the same time, it's very scary to me how quickly pretty large communities got completely destroyed in one natural disaster. Very, very, very alarming and awakening. Just as a personal thing, I've been paying attention to what things people ended up using and what things they didn't need in that first couple hours and the first couple days. There's a lot of wisdom to be learned from this, from watching how they responded here in both, Tennessee, North Carolina, Southern Virginia, and South Carolina and Florida. And I think, didn't Northern Georgia also get hit too, Frank?
Yes. Yeah, I have relatives there. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's a incredibly large geographic area, and perfect example. I left the vacation spot we were at and got on one of the interstates that was open, and I drove 7 hours, and we were still within the area that there was destruction around. I hate to seem flippant about it, but that was all day driving, and it was still, you could still see that there was activity going on. And so at least the interstates were open. That's one thing that I will say that they did well. At least that's been my experience. Most of the interstates have been elevated. So yes, there's I-40 got hit pretty hard. And I think, what was the other one? I-26. Those interstates are going to be out of commission for probably years, but the other surrounding interstates seem to survive this disaster well enough to pass.
Blue Ridge Parkway is out. Just we don't know when segments of that will come back.
Yeah, I actually was on the Blue Ridge Parkway 3 days before that.
Yeah,
very scary.
But people that don't know, a lot of that highway is literally built on the edge of a mountain.
Yes. It was a very pretty view, by the way. So anyway, that's all I really have on this story, but it's, there's a lot going on here with this, and there's a lot more to be learned here as the response continues.
Certainly is, and sounds like you actually saw a lot of it firsthand. Frank, what's your thoughts on this one?
I'll try to compliment Bill, and Bill gave a really good perspective on it. Let me come at it from this way. What is it that ham radio can do in an emergency where other communications goes down? Well, if everybody got on the simplex frequency and just started talking, there would be this cacophony of, like Martin Rothwell was talking about 5-9 next, contesting. The key thing, in my opinion, that happens in this is some organization of communication. We call that ARES here in the States. I believe it's still called RayNet, Martin, over in the UK. And so that's a function where let's figure out some ways that we do communicate. I've been an emergency coordinator up in the Starkville, Mississippi area when I was there. I've been through a lot of the training and earlier on as they ramped it up, which ran off a bunch of people. They didn't want to get, into all these tests and things, but it had to happen because of the coordination, as Bill articulated after the 2001 event with the Twin Towers, of coordinating these kind of communications. Organizing, that's a key thing in amateur radio that helps make it work. Okay. Do we need all hams to be involved? Well, all hams aren't involved. Our best data that we have is the national survey in Canada for RAC. 36% say they do in the previous month emergency communications. So it's not that all hams shouldn't be knowledgeable. It's just that we don't need all hams involved to do a great job. Let me add this to what Bill had to say. And I want to highlight the ham that he mentioned, our friend Thomas Witherspoon, K4SWL. And if you go to one of his blogs, qrper.com, you'll know that Thomas is one of the most visible parks on the air operators. He does real-time videos and tries different equipment and all that good stuff. And I dare say that POTA participation is excellent preparation for MCOM because there's a protocol, you follow it, you know how to exchange the preferred message, and so on and so on. And so I suspect that one of the operators for the Mount Mitchell repeater that Bill may have heard was Thomas, K4SWL, because he did operate that. Thomas I'll give a brief snapshot of how Thomas and his family responded. By a stroke of luck, the house they built in Swannanoa, which is east of Nashville, kind of in the wood with a low population area, they built their own home. They went to a small solar system. And, that's what they were doing. They got Starlink for internet when it came out. And just by stroke of luck, their generator dealer gave him a call and said, look, we've got some Tesla Powerwall version 2 batteries that we can deep discount because they're coming out with version 3. You guys interested? And so Thomas said, yes, we took 2 of them. So they, by stroke of luck, had 2 Powerwall whole house backup batteries installed that gave them a 10 kilowatt grid tied solar system. Now, so they were on the grid and that was not their, but they had the backup. So when the power went down, they have yet to lose electricity. They had a tree that knocked out 20% of their solar capability, but that 80% kept them so that their power has not gone out. Here's what they did besides Thomas operating on the nets. He has 2 daughters who are licensed hams. If you follow his blog, you know all this. They opened up their home's internet, took the password off. All their neighbors would wander up, do Wi-Fi cell calling to contact their family, send messages, and so on. They would allow them to charge their tablets, their phones, and so on. And so their back porch, they kind of nicknamed the Witherspoon Internet Cafe. And so their neighbors have done FEMA applications on computers there and so on. And if you read QRPer.com, the several blog posts that Bill mentioned, you'll see they had a dozen trees blocking their dirt road to their house. They were completely cut off. But because he was a ham and because they had a kind of a prepper mentality, if you will, his wife is a commercial artist. So she's not in a technical field per se. He's got 2 daughters who are hams because they were prepared. They are a tremendous resource to their area community. And so they have just done a tremendous job as ham operators. One of the things that I have one son, I don't have a daughter, got a granddaughter. I don't know that I would be brave enough to do this, but Thomas writes that he put one of his daughters as the electricity czar of their household, and she had complete and sole authority to go around unplugging things that she didn't think ought to be taking up their electricity. So they've done a great job with managing their resources, but like I think many hams would do, kind of have an open household to others who need support. What a wonderful representative for amateur radio. Thomas Witherspoon, K4SWL.
Yeah, certainly is, Frank. And, you and Bill have told us a lot about some of the background stories that have been happening, which is very, very good. Chris, I know it hasn't happened over here, and I say touch wood yet, but what do you think on this one?
Yeah, it seems like a theme was on this episode. Lots of talk about amateur radio helping out in emergencies, and clearly this was a huge one. I think they were saying, is it a 100-year storm or something? I think it was announced before it happened, and looked pretty crazy from the news over here. Looking at some of the video of the weather. Interesting, you mentioned the Blue Ridge Parkway. I've got a friend that actually has a house on the Blue Ridge Parkway, and he was sending me the other day some photographs of the damage. So a whole bunch of trees came down, and I think the power was out for about 7 days. So I think they were saying, yes, that the parkway is currently closed. So yeah, a lot of trees on their property, and some huge trees that had come down. The roots out of the ground. Sort of, the winds must have been absolutely phenomenal at the time when that happened. So I've never personally experienced that sort of weather. It must be pretty scary when that happens. So no, I think there's not much else I can say really, other than I think it's been said by the other guys there. And yeah, I think Frank made a good point. There's no point just having an amateur ranger and thinking you're going to be able to somehow magically help out. It does require an element of training and following a protocol. As as we heard earlier, there's that wilderness protocol. There is the FEMA scheme, I think, that was being mentioned earlier by Bill. That's what used to kick into action. It's not just you've got a radio, okay, you can help. You need to actually know what you're doing. And I don't know what I'm doing. I've never been trained in those things, and maybe you should be. Certainly, if you live in a part of the world where these things happen, then I would definitely encourage anyone to get involved and be prepared and have those skills before it happens.
Yeah, I agree with you, Chris. Martin, have we left anything for you to say?
Not very much. I mean, we mentioned the first story, when all else fails, amateur radio. I do wonder if I'd be interested to see a stat whether there are more hams in areas that are more prone to natural disasters. It's an interesting stat I'd like to see. Reading this story is disappointing. There was apparently some malicious interference to some repeaters and some emergency traffic on repeaters. That's not cool. But the only other thing I'll say is just listen. I mean, absolutely fascinated listening to what Frank was saying about Thomas. Is letting his satellite internet facilities out for people to call home. Times of emergencies, everyone steps up, everybody gets involved. If you've got that, massive kudos for doing that sort of thing. And and anybody that's helped and anybody that's been affected by hurricanes or anything like that, we hope you're doing okay.
It's great to know that people out there do help each other and bits and pieces. Right, that concludes our news stories. Let's find out what the guys have been up to since the last time we spoke. Bill, you have a hard stop. Do you want to go first?
Yes, it's been quite a while. I'm doing my normal soda and POTA hunting over the last month or so. A couple of special event stations I worked, including one in the Netherlands I worked, a special event station. I also worked the Pennsylvania CUSO party a little bit over the weekend. I got about 4 hours that I was able to work between all the events going on. So I worked 68 stations. I ended up working 21 CW, 47 phone. Worked some of the counties, 42 out of the 67. If I would have had more time in the chair, I probably would have did a little better on that. But my county's kind of rare, so I got on, and me and two others, it looked like, was on off and on from the contest to give out the county. So we think we got most everybody. Other than that, just plugging along here, enjoying the bands when they're good. We had some solar activity, including the Thursday night, I think it was. I got to see the Northern Lights, which is not common to come down this far south. It was supposed to happen Saturday night or Sunday night before that, but we had rain, so there was cloud cover. But Thursday night, right a little bit after dusk, very, very brilliant pink with a just on the horizon green curtain-like. And we took some pictures and stuff and drug the kids out, and the neighbors took pictures. And interestingly enough, the neighbor took a picture of his house facing south and actually could see the Northern Lights. So it went really far south. And one of the Facebook groups I'm on had pictures in from, North Carolina, Tennessee, Arkansas, Oklahoma. Very, very, very strong solar storm that caused a very strong geomagnetic storm, which gave us that aurora activity. Very unusual. So after I saw the aurora, I, of course, turned on the radio, and there was some people bouncing signals off 10 meters, some bouncing off 6. That's the kind of bands I usually think. But I did tune around some of the other bands, and it was kind of amusing to me, the folks saying, I don't know what's wrong with my audio tonight. It's like, well, you're getting a little reverb off the aurora. That's why you sound a little different on SSB. But I didn't break in and ruin their fun. I just let them try to figure it out. But that's all that's going on with me for this month. So I'll pass it back to you, and I am going to drop. So 73, everybody.
Yeah, okay,
73.
Bill. Yeah,
73,
73, Bill. Right. Frank, what have you been up to?
Well, Martin, I went up to Mayo Clinic for my 3-month checkup on my prostate cancer surgeries I've shared with our listeners. I had great results. The PSA was not detectable. So if they put me on a 4-year surveillance period, I'll have PSA test every 3 months. Now, they'll send me a kit and ship it to me and by FedEx, and I'll take it to a local medical lab. They'll do a blood draw and send it back up to Mayo. So I won't really have to travel up in person as long as it stays not detectable. And should it show something, I'll certainly go back up. And I just can't say enough good things about Mayo Clinic as a patient-focused hospital. So if you're a man or you love one, keep your PSA in check, particularly if you pass the 50-year mark on the calendar. On the ham radio side, I'm still experimenting with some AI-based OCR, optical character recognition tools. I'm trying to create a database of hams for each decade from 1910 to 1990 using call books that are on the Internet Archive. I've gotten up through 1960 in preparing them. These are scanned versions that may have burn marks and so on, headers, footers. So I'm applying, those of you who use Photoshop or GIMP know what I'm doing here by applying mask so I can minimize what the OCR will have to read. So I've got 3 more, 1970, 80, and 90, and each one will get increasingly longer, some 80 pages or more for a given district as there are more hams. This is an experimental. If it works with the AI-based OCR giving good records, I'll geocode them and try to create maps to look at the evolution of amateur radio in the U.S. We simply don't have records from the FCC because there was a fire in a record storage facility some years ago. So we don't go back earlier. And this is several months. I'm sure the readers or listeners rather will hear more about this. I also noted last time I was on, I picked up an HP 4275A LCR meter that will measure up to 10 megahertz, the LCR parameters. I'm going through tests on it. It's thus far, it's about 1 ohm off on measuring a standard 1K resistor as compared to a Matrix MCR 5200 that I bought on a open box half price thing. I'll do some calibrating on it. I want to get it as accurate as I can. It's a very, very nice piece of kit, and it'll be good on my workbench to complement other instruments. And did I mention I didn't pay much for it? To celebrate my good trip and results at the Mayo Clinic, I bought another radio. I found an Aloft KX3 package for a real good price, and it's in pristine condition. Now, I'm a big pan adapter waterfall fan, so I immediately ordered the PX3 from Aloft to go with it. I also ordered the roofing filter to install. Now, this will go with my existing KXPA 100 amplifier that I had purchased a couple of years ago, using it with primarily my IC705, and it'll give me a very nice radio system. Martin, the radios around here are like rabbits. They're multiplying.
Well, when I send you the funnies at the end of the week, there's one I think you'll like. And it is about buying radios. Hi. I know you've been doing some antenna work because I chatted to you last week. I was a bit late sending you my 23 SEMS antenna that I promised to send you the information on, but hopefully you got it. So
I did get it. Nice work.
Yeah. It's not that pretty, but it works. And it don't cost a lot of money. So that's a good one. Right. Martin, what have you been up to since we last spoke?
Probably not as much as I should be, because I've been unwell. I have a newborn child. I have been working, so I have no time. So the repeater's broken. So we're looking into fixing that. That went down, I think, mid to late September, something went wrong. We've got a workaround on the air, but we do need to go back up there with the bandpass filter to try and filter out some of the rubbish that is up there. But I'm also waiting on another piece of kit being delivered, but I can't say what it is yet. But I'm in quite in-depth conversations with the company that is providing that. So that's interesting stuff. I will tell you more when it's there and when it's working. Also been playing with some very expensive, I mean, I say stupidly expensive radios that we bought at work. We bought a load of them. And when I say stupidly expensive, they are £5,000, maybe £6,000 each. And when I say radios, they are not conventional radios in the shape of your Icons Motorola's. They are comm systems for events, and we all have them on our belts. We all have big headsets for them. Full duplex, multiple channels. You can have multiple channels all talking at once. One can overtalk the other, and you can link them into like Skype conferences and things like that, so you can have remote participants on your conference. It is, you know, when I first looked at the cost of these, like, geez, what have these got that Motorola or whoever haven't? Because there's a hell of a price tag. And okay, they're full duplex, but how does it work? But yeah, there's a lot, and you go into the back end and the software that controls it. You can EQ everyone's different mic differently, so I can hear the EQ from your mic differently, that Frank can hear the EQ from your mic and stuff. Oh, it's incredible stuff. So yeah, playing a lot with those, trying to get my head around those. There's actually a 2-day webinar that comes with them, so that's a whole other story, but that's what I've been playing with. Other than that, I've got 4 meters back in the car, which is nice. I've been playing a little bit with that as I've been driving around. Well, I do need to get another battery for my car, because I was having a hybrid car. The little battery in the back is not very powerful, the 12-volt one. So it's a little bit upset. So I might try and get a bigger battery on there. So that's there, and also trying to find a suitable mounting holder. I can't remember if I mentioned before. I have a roof box on my car at the moment on the roof rack, and normally the antenna clamps to the roof rack, so I have to take that off when I put the roof box on. And the hatchback mounts I had didn't fit, and I didn't realise you can get different sizes of hatchback mounts. I kind of thought they were all sort of generic size. So I just need to find someone that will sell me the right one, and then if it doesn't work, we'll take it back happily without asking too many questions or without getting upset about why they're having to refund an open box. So yeah, that's kind of what I've been working on.
Yeah, so it sounds like you've been doing a little bit, so that's good. And let's say, obviously, play on. Chris, what have you been up to since we last spoke?
Not a huge amount. I did work a certain station that was on Epsom Downs, and I'm sure you're going to talk about this later, the other day, on part of the 433 Alive activity. Afterwards, I realised I was running 5 watts, so it was, I sort of checked the power, blimey, okay, I'm running 5 watts, so obviously made the contact pretty well on pretty low power. Not with an awful lot of rage. I did do a little bit last night actually on HF, so I made a few contacts, mainly into Europe, so that was good. Now it's kind of coming dark. Now we're into autumn or fall, as I say in the States. It's definitely, having an effect. Certainly, the lower bands tend to be quite noisy in my area. And yes, Bill mentioned the Northern Lights, and yes, a little bit of that I saw for the first time the other night. It wasn't some of the things you see on the internet, on Facebook, etc., are quite spectacular, and nothing like that. But there was some sort of pink light in the sky, which is quite interesting to see. Never seen that before. But of course, when that happens, I believe that sort of knocks out HF. So didn't bother putting the radio on that time. Interestingly, I'm taking the camper van out soon, so I thought I'd give it a bit of a check over yesterday, and I noticed the mag mount on the roof is extremely rusty, and I think I've changed it before actually. The previous one was also very rusty, and I'm not going to give the name of the manufacturer, but it's a well-known quality brand, shall we say, and it was bought from a dealer. So, I mean, whether it's a counterfeit one, I don't know, but disappointing that's going to have to go in the bin now and have to get a new one, because it was, the label was still on there from the manufacturer, but the mag mount itself was, you would expect to have a degree of rust proofing, and obviously hadn't. So I think I may be looking for a different manufacturer next time. So a bit disappointing, really. But that's that's going to go in the bin. Apart from that, Martin, not really much in the way of radio, I'm afraid.
Well, at least you've been busy. I probably told the guys on the last episode I snapped a mag mount the other couple of weeks ago going into the car park at Gatwick Airport, and I forgot the antenna was on top of the car, and instead of the antenna and mag mount just rolling over, the magnet stayed connected to the roof, and the rest of the mag mount snapped in half. Yeah, what you were into, what you were mentioning last Saturday, Edmund M1MRB and myself were on Epsom Downs, which is a reasonable high point, not the highest, but a reasonable high point, about 15, 16 miles south of London. And there was an event on called 433 Alive, where people on UHF 433 megs could make contacts. Edmund and I made 22 contacts in 3 hours, which is almost unheard of because most people tell you there's nobody on 77s. But we made 22 contacts in 3 hours. They weren't just 5 and 9, thank you very much, Martin. Because I worked you, or Edmund worked you, they were conversations. And within the group, we worked Martin, Chris, and Leslie as part of our 22 contacts. So that was a good one for the club. I've been updating Sutton and Cheam's training material, and that's now gone into our archive because I gave it to Chris Monday night. So the information's in the club's archive should it ever be needed again. I'm doing 2 training sessions a week with a student at the moment, so that's keeping me relatively busy. I've done some 2 meter and 77 bits and pieces, and I've been on the talk group, not as often as I like, but I've been doing a lot of documentation at the moment over the last few weeks. And unfortunately, guys, yet again, I never saw the Northern Lights because I didn't even know it was going to happen. So I think the reason I'm missing it is because I didn't know it was going to happen. And secondly, I live in a very, very, very built-up area. So the light pollution would have probably stopped me from seeing it anyway. But that's a real shame. And lastly, nobody noticed any difference on the previous podcast. When I was at the National Hamfest, Martin, I used my wireless microphone adapters and made it a lot easier for us dodging around. Mine are up on 5G. I know Colin's are down on 2G, but mine are up on 5 gig, and they seem to work quite well. I used a proper microphone and just had the transmitter receiver connected. That worked for us, so I'm quite pleased with those. And hopefully won't get too much interference at other places because I'll try them again. So that's all I've been up to. Martin, did you want to comment on that?
I was going to say, you try running it at 2.4 gig there, though.
No, these don't do 2.4, they're 5 gig.
Yeah, 5 gigs are a lot less congested.
Yeah. The beauty of these ones is they weren't that expensive, but they're 5 gig. You got a transmitter and a receiver, and because they're paired, if you get interference on channel 1, you just push channel 2 button and on either of the devices, and they both change. So they're communicating with each other all the time. So you don't have to think, well, is my transmitter on channel 2 and my receiver on channel 3? Because that just doesn't happen. Which, if you push one of the buttons, they both change. So nice little unit. I think it was just under £100. You know, first time I've used them in anger, and they work very, very well. Right, that's pretty much all I've been up to. Right, all that's left for me to do now is to thank the guys for turning up and move on to the next part of the podcast. I'd like to thank Mr. Chris Howard, M0TCH.
Yeah, thanks, Marty. Thanks, guys.
No problems, and great to have you. I'd like to thank Mr. Martin Rothwell, M0SGL.
Good fun. See you next time.
Yeah, we'll do. I'd like to thank Mr. Frank Howell, K4FMH.
And it's good to be here this time, Martin. I enjoyed it greatly.
Yeah, great to have you, Frank, as always. No problems at all. Right, well, I'll say 73 to you guys, and we'll move on to the next part of the podcast. 73, guys.
73.
73.
Keep your amateur ham radio podcast advert free by donating less than a length of coax. Visit www.icqpodcast.com/donate now. For all the news, links and information, visit www.icqpodcast.com.
Now it's time to have a look at the news in brief from me, M6BOY. This weekend, as we release, will be the second half of the Jamboree on the Air event, and there's a Earth Moon Earth event taking place at the Dingaloo Radio Telescope located in the Netherlands. And there's a scout station there that will be on 432.050 megahertz between 1700 UTC and 2230 UTC on the day that we release this show. So good luck in catching that scout group on the air for Jamboree on the Air doing an Earth Moon Earth event. Following the recent appointment of 2 youth champions for schools and universities, the RSGB are keen to expand the team. They're looking for a youth champion for scouts, guides and cadets, and another to lead and create resources to support young people once they've gained their foundation license, motivate them to try new things in the hobby, etc. So they're going to work very closely with the RSGB board liaison, Ben Lloyd, Golf Whiskey 4, Bravo Mike Lima, and the RSGB outreach team. So if you would like to get involved in this, we'll put a link on the ICQ podcast webpage for you, and you can get involved and help our next generation of hams get on the air. The ARDC have announced a new director of technology. It's software developer Shayla Earl, November 0 Golf India Sierra. He joins the team with a wealth of experience, particularly in the open source software development community, wireless technology, engineering management, and of course, and very importantly, the ham radio interest. He's been a licensed ham since 2011 and is a former member of the Auxiliary Communications Service in San Francisco, California. Among his many successes, he's a co-author of Mapping Hacks. That is a book that explores the potential held by free open source geographic information systems. So he's published that book about 20 years ago. It was quite interesting there. So congratulations and good luck in your new role. Right, now we head over to our features episode, and this episode's feature is the second half of our report from the UK Hamfest 2024 from Newark in the Midlands in the UK. As always, hope you enjoy.
And now for this episode's feature from the ICQ podcast.
Hi guys, this episode's feature is part 2 of our trip to the National Hamfest in the UK 2024. With still some very interesting interviews to come. I hope you enjoyed the previous episode, but I think this one is equally as fun. So, I come to Hassel Graham from BHI. Long time no see since Dayton, I believe we were there this year. But you spoke to Ed in Friedrichshafen, and I had that nice little, well, ICQ boys all right, but except for mine. So that put a smile on my face, Graham, because I knew you were playing. But how are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks, mate. I would never say anything bad about you. It was just a tongue-in-cheek. I can't even remember what I said. But no, we're good. Thanks. Bit of a nightmare getting here yesterday with the traffic, but I'm glad we're here. It's been 2 years. And it's been pretty good so far this morning. The new noise cancelling headphones, the Bluetooth ones that we brought out, they're selling quite well. And I think I'm preempting there's a review in next month's Radcom, which could be quite good. But in this month's Radcom, I was very pleased to see the review of our NEDSP 1962 KBD. Yeah, a bit of a mouthful that. The amplified speaker install module, and there's a really good 3-page review explaining how you fit that in your own extension speaker. It comes with a full fitting kit, so yeah, if you've got a Radcom this month, have a good read of that.
Yeah, certainly will. Now, Graham, I walked by your stand earlier and you were trying to sell a guy an NES 10, and I did my usual. Did I put the guy off or did you get the sale? Hopefully I didn't put him off.
I got the sale and the power supply to boot, so, I didn't ask him for feedback about your input, but yeah, joint effort, let's say.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm going to say this for the podcast. The NES 10 is an absolutely brilliant device. I own 2 of them. I joke with Graham when I see him that it's a marriage saver, because when you are operating, say in your back garden and other members of the family are there, and you're on HF, you don't want to hear all the time. So you switch the NES 10 on and it all goes away and you just hear the individual voice. And the lady was with the gentleman. She had a big smile on her face when I said it, didn't she?
She did, yeah, she did. I mean, that speaker was the first thing we developed in 2002, and we didn't even know if we were going to get a business out of it. And we were at the Epsom Rally, June 2002, and people were walking past and we weren't selling anything. And it was like, what's going on here? But eventually we sold one, and then it went from there, really. So it has been our main product, still is one of our best sellers. And that's on the Mark IV now, so it's amazing.
Yeah. Well, I have a Mark IV and I have an earlier one, and they both work very, very well. I will give you that, and that's a true and honest review.
Thank you, Martin. Yeah, I mean, the thing is, people always say, oh, I didn't know it sounded like that. So having this big rally means we can actually show people that it does actually. It's not a con. This is what it does and what all our products do. Hopefully we'll be working on some new products maybe next year. You know, just keep going, moving forward, really.
Yeah, sounds good. Well, I'm not going to hold you too long because I think I've frightened everybody away. But great to see you again. We're not here tomorrow, but we'll catch up with you soon.
Yeah, that'd be great to catch up maybe tomorrow. And I might go back to my room tonight and watch a DVD of Les Miserables. I've heard it's really good.
You're just winding Colin up because that's what he's doing over in Belfast this week instead of being at the rally.
Would I do that, Colin?
Yeah, thank you, Graham.
ICQ. Do you?
So very quickly, we're at the National Hamfest. I'm with this gentleman who's going to tell me his call sign because I've forgotten.
I'm Andy G0SFJ.
Yeah, G0SFJ, Andy. Andy's got in front of him a very, very old QSL card. Now, this is a QSL card that should have been sent to G2NM, which is at Gerard Marcuse, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It's from a QSO with New Zealand. Call sign at the time was Zulu 1 Alpha Oscar, and the QSO took place on September the 29th, 1925.
Yeah.
Now, Russell White, who was the ham in New Zealand, sent it to Gerald in the Royal Mail, but it never got to him. It's stamped on the back that it was received in the UK in Guildford, but it's insufficiently addressed, and it never ever was delivered to him. So what happened was I saw it on an auction site and bought it very cheaply from somebody who didn't know what it was, looked up G2NM, and it's now held by the Amberley Museum, I believe. And so what I'd like to do, Martin, is give it to you as a postman. 99 years on, the post office failed to deliver it. Please, would you deliver it to Golf 2 November Mike?
Well, I'll accept that from you. I will tell you I did work for a short period for the post office.
Oh, well, in that case, you are very well experienced in the ways of the post office.
No. It was only a short-term contract job. The other one was, you may not be aware, Edmund Spicer, who I'm going to take this to, who will take this into the Amberley Museum, is actually the current license holder for G2NM.
Yes.
So, in a nice way, the cards come home, and we did a feature on Gerard Marcuse not so long ago in the podcast.
So I understand.
And he was a fantastic guy. I would have loved to have met him. I've been lucky to meet a few really of the clever old boys, but I would have loved to have met him.
Well, you are now a postman again. 99 years on, almost to the day, because the QSO was on September the 29th, 1925. We are now today, September the 27th, 2024. There's 99 years it's taken, and by the time by the time you get it to the new license holder, it will be 99 years. So thank you very much for accepting it, and I look forward to it being displayed in the Amberley Museum. Thank you.
Yeah, well, it'll definitely get there, and thank you very, very much for doing that for Edmund. I'm sure he'll appreciate it as much as I have.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time.
Whether it's across the pond or over the channel, the ICQ podcast is international.
Herzlich willkommen in Deutschland.
Good evening.
73 de España.
By amateurs, for amateurs.
Well, I've managed to catch up with Mike from CCOM. I've been backwards and forwards past your stand all day. You've been busy, Mike. How's it going?
It's all right, Mark. It's all right. Busy. I want to get some food now. That's all I'm worried about. I don't care about antennas anymore.
Yeah. So it looks like a good one. I'm not here tomorrow, but are you going to be sold out, I reckon, by tomorrow?
I've sold out the 2 metre Moxons already. So, we're doing all right. Doing all right. That's all I'll say, Martin.
Well, that's good news. That's good news. And
we've got the new big wheels here. Have you seen them?
I only seen them online. I hadn't seen them.
You haven't seen them online. They're not on there yet.
Oh, I thought I had.
So you might have seen me talking about it in the odd Facebook group.
All right.
Whinging about them.
So you're happy with them?
Yes, they've been a lot of work. It's the most complicated antenna to make.
Yeah.
Literally, you move them stubs by a couple of mil and it knocks it all out.
Yeah.
So.
But then, having purchased a number of your antennas, they are good quality. So I've recommended them to other people. They are good, so I'm sure they work well.
Thank you, Mark. Yeah, I do work hard, as you know.
Yeah. So, anything new likely to happen in the next few months?
So, well, we've got the big wheels we just spoke about. We've got a HF antenna coming out, very similar to the HF Pro.
Yeah.
With capacitive ends and some HF stuff, which I've just had the moulds done for. Maybe not in the next few months, but certainly probably, I don't know, early next year.
That sounds good, because up until now, your antennas have been VHF and above, haven't they, predominantly? So having HF is certainly going to add to your arsenal.
It will, Martin. You've just got to find the time to make it all. And fit in the kids and a full-time job as well.
Yeah, and all the broadcast antennas you make as well.
No comment on that.
All right, okay. You're a busy man.
Yes.
But, Mike, lovely to catch up with you. I know it's a quick one today, but look after yourself, and we'll catch up with you again soon.
Thanks a lot, Martin. Good to see you, mate. Keep safe.
So, what a lot of people don't know, Martin, because I'm with Martin Lynch, who's now just been given a lovely piece of cake.
Very, very much.
Hey, you must be a superstar, Martin.
I must be, mustn't I? How are you?
I'm okay, Martin. And what a lot of people don't know is I used to work for you.
You did, but unfortunately it didn't last because I couldn't afford you. Just too much money. How you doing?
I'm doing okay, mate. I'm doing okay. And it was a great experience working for you.
No, it's very good. Quite a few years ago now.
Well, we've been doing the podcast 16 years, and it was before then, so nearly 20 years ago.
And this is your...
That's my grandson.
Can't believe it's your grandson.
23.
How the hell have you got... Did you start when you were 7?
Yeah.
23-year-old I've got an 8-year-old grandson and a 9-year-old granddaughter.
Right.
And my eldest boy, Daniel, who's behind me, runs my show for me, with his little brother, who's 29, Henry.
Yeah.
And, we're doing very well, thank you. Very, very well indeed.
Yeah, I remember Henry coming into the shop.
Henry.
Yeah, when in the days it was great.
I was talking about it earlier, actually, when my ex-wife and I got married. In the magazines, I bought honeymoon specials, I seem to remember. We went away on a honeymoon. Anyway, that's all in the past now. But there it is. I'm happily not married anymore and living in North Devon, which is brilliant.
Yeah, I spoke to a couple of guys in North Devon, and they reckon you're having real fun down there. So that's good.
I'm loving it. It's a beautiful place to live, I tell you.
Yeah. So you're kind of just keeping an eye on the business, but the son's running it for you.
Not even that. I'm retired I'm 9/10 retired. I still do the advertising when I'm in London, which is quite frequent, every other month, or every month really, once a month. I pop in, come up to the stand. I'll be at the RSGB convention next week. Are you going there?
I'm hoping to get there.
Yeah,
Not guaranteed, but I'm hoping.
Oh, good. So how's life with ICQ?
ICQ keeps me extremely busy.
16 years?
16 years.
I remember when you first started it.
Oh, no, it was a bit rough when we started.
No, it's good. Well, it's good that it's testament that you've done it right because it's still going.
Yeah, well...
And I'm pleased to see you're almost wearing the MLNS colours.
Well, I know my son gives you grief when
he does, yeah. It's funny,
You got one back.
It's good, isn't it?
Yeah,
Very good.
But, no, it's great to catch up with you, Martin.
And you, mate.
You're looking well.
Thank you.
Keep doing what you're doing.
And you, long may you survive.
Same to you, Martin. Look after yourself.
All the best, yeah. See you, boys.
Yeah.
The ICQ podcast. Come for a moment. Stay for an hour.
So, great to catch up with Steve, G0KYA. Steve, long time no speak, and you often tell me about propagation. But you got a smile on your face, the propagation must be good at the moment.
Yes, I think that we had like 2 or 3 years of very poor propagation, and now the sunspot cycle has really taken off, and it's going great guns.
Yeah, well, I must admit I agree with you, because I've been out and about, even playing myself on HF, and I don't do a lot of HF, but with 20 watts, it's brilliant.
Yeah, it's all come true. With the sunspot cycle's gone up, solar flux has gone up, lots of sunspots, so plenty of propagation going on.
Yeah. So, anything new from yourself, Steve? I know you've written a number of good books on propagation. Are you up to anything else?
I think at the moment, the big push this year is HAMSCI, which is an American organisation. Well, it's a worldwide organisation, which is combining the work of amateurs with professional scientists. And we formed a fairly close relationship now, Propagation Studies Committee here. And I've got Gwyn here today, and they're doing some really good stuff. He's done some very, very clever work on the solar eclipse that happened earlier this year, which is proved very well. And he's using new techniques so we can tell from the results whether the thing has maybe had one bounce or two bounces or no bounces at all, which is brand new. So very, very chuffed with that and the work we're doing.
Yeah. Well, we got HAMSCI contacted us as a podcast, and we've run them. And I must admit, I spoke to them when I was in Dayton. They seem to really be trying, and it's nice to know that as amateurs, we're working all together. It's not, this is in my backyard. I mean, HAMSCI are in the States, the RSGB's in the UK. We're all working together, aren't we?
Absolutely. I mean, Propagation Studies Committee, we've always wanted to have tie-ups with professional scientists, but it's actually hard in this country. There's not that many scientists working professionally on ionospheric propagation, say. And so you make a link with somebody and build it up, and then they go and move on to something else. So it's been difficult, but I think the HAMSCI bringing the whole global community together. So I think it works quite well.
Yeah, I'm pleased with that. Well, it's only a quick one, Steve, but thanks for your time on that. Look after yourself.
All right, thank you very much.
Well, guys, we're at the National Ham Fest. I know it's not ham radio, but I've managed to catch up with Doug from Telonics, and I told Doug over the last 2 years since I first met him, I bought 3 pieces of equipment off him, and he probably wouldn't have been aware of that, but good quality gear, Doug.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So first of all, thanks very much for the orders. So now one of our best customers. So good to see you again, and welcome back.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I was the best customer, but not a problem. And as I say, you do some great test equipment.
We do. Yeah, lots of test equipment from Rigel, Siglance, TechBox, and that's just a few of them. And if you take a look at our website, so www.telonic.co.uk, you'll see everything.
Yeah. Well, as I said to Doug, I bought a 200 meg storage scope, a spectrum analyzer, and a function generator. And that function generator is something I've never owned before, but I found it very, very useful, and I was actually using it to align radios the other day.
Fantastic. Well, I'm glad you're getting good use out of it. So, well, what perhaps you need to look at now is, I upgrading your oscilloscope, which again you've only just bought, but the new technology now is 12-bit oscilloscopes as opposed to 8 bits, and that gives you 16 times the resolution of what you get off your standard scope.
Yeah, well, that could very well be on the market soon. We have to be a bit careful. Yeah, Mrs. B doesn't give me that much grief, but the fact that I have another oscilloscope might be a question.
That might get noticed.
Yeah. So, have you got any products?
So we just mentioned the 12-bit scopes. So both Siglent and Rigel have got some oscilloscopes out at the moment, all 12-bit platforms, starting at 70 meg 2-channel, and then you'd get a 100 meg 4-channel, and it goes all the way up to 4 gigahertz now. So, yeah, really quite something.
Yeah. I mean, scopes are phenomenal now compared to what they were. I mean, I remember in the 80s, well, in the 70s I was a radio TV engineer. In the 80s I went into computers and they gave me a Tektronix 465, which is a 100 meg scope. And I was almost orgasmic because I could actually look at waveforms that I'd only ever seen in books.
Yeah, I mean, nowadays the features that they've got are quite something, and obviously a lot smaller and lighter than they used to be.
Certainly are, and nicer to keep. The other one I did with my scope, because I knew I was going to take it out and about, was I actually got the carry bag for it, and that sort of protects it when you take it out and about, doesn't it?
It does indeed, yeah. I mean, we recommend that to all customers. You know, if you're moving the equipment around and it leaves the bench, then yeah, padded bag is ideal.
Yeah. So, apart from 12-bit scopes, what happening?
Other things are from SensePeak. So SensePeak makes some probing kits. So if you've got an oscilloscope, a power supply, a waveform generator, and you want to hold your PCB and have hands-free, so they've got some lovely hands-free probing kits. Really worth a look.
Yeah, certainly are. I've looked at them before, and I can see them in the distance from where I am now. So, all I'd say is, you know, there's some lovely piece of equipment. I could spend all day here, and if I won the lottery, mate, I think I'd have to come down, visit you, and we'd have to go for it on one of them.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously there's some great discounts here today, so if anybody's listening, then yeah, pop down and you can see what we've got.
Yeah, certainly they can. Now, one quick one, Doug, before I leave you in peace, your website again for our listeners.
So www.talonic.co.uk.
That's great. Thank you very much for your time, Doug.
Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Whether it's across the pond or over the channel, the ICQ podcast is international.
Herzlich willkommen in Deutschland.
Good evening.
73 de España.
By amateurs, for amateurs.
Okay, this is Ed, DD5LP for ICQ Podcast. We're still at the National Hamfest in Newark, and we've managed to corner Ian Shepherd, one of the organisers. And I just want to ask him how he felt it's going this year, and is there already planning for next year? And generally, I think there's a good feeling today. The sun's come out, and I think people are quite happy. Ian, what's your opinion?
Yes, it's been after yesterday, with the horrendous weather, we had a number of people, traders mainly, were affected on Thursday trying to get from London to the Midlands and from the north to the Midlands. Mm-hmm. And things conspired against us and them, the weather in the south and several accidents in the north.
Oh,
so
dear.
it was impossible. The M25 had bits closed, the A1 had pieces closed, the Dartford crossing was closed for some time, and a journey which should have taken 2 to 3 hours from, say, Reading took 6 or 7 hours. So we were here till very late on Thursday.
Yeah, the inside traders get to set up on Thursday evening, don't they?
They do.
And there's a lot to set up in there. I mean, I've just come out from there, and it's well packed again this year. So it's good to see all the traders.
Yes, there's very few of them. Well, I don't think any of the main traders that we rely on for the equipment are not present this year. One or two of the people on the periphery are not here.
Mm-hmm.
We understand from the traders that trade here has been very good, which is pleasing because that means they'll probably come back.
Yeah.
The economic climate for events is not as good as it was, because the margins for the traders and our costs are all going in the wrong directions. Margins going down, our costs going up.
Yeah.
But we have managed to secure through our commercial director a deal here for the next 2 years. We sign a 3-year deal here.
Oh, that's very good news.
And we've got a good deal for next year and the year after.
Good, so it's going to be here next year and the year after. We just have to have somebody arrange better weather.
That would be good. That would be good. If only we had a computer that could do that.
Yeah. Is there anything that you think, I mean, how long has the National Hempfest been going? It's 30, 40 years?
A long time now. It's moved around, but it started at Granby Halls in Leicester, which was called it was a consortium of traders at that time.
Right.
Then it moved to Donington, near East Midlands Airport.
Yes.
But that suffered the problem of noise from the motor circuit next door.
Right.
And on one occasion was at the same time as a motorcycle event.
Yeah.
And you couldn't hear yourself think inside.
Dear.
Then moved from there, because the expenses were against it, to Loughborough for 1 year, and that didn't work either, because it was a remote site and you couldn't get a car anywhere near the premises.
I remember, was it 2 years ago that it had to be cancelled because this site wasn't available because of some problem?
2022 we had it here.
Yeah.
2023 there was a hiccup, I can only say that.
Yeah.
We had the standard week, which we always arrange, I say 3 years in advance, but I don't know, there was a double booking, and the person that booked our dates was a bigger customer than we were.
Yeah, and that's why it's so good that you've got now the next 2 years booked in advance. And I think most of the amateurs in the UK know where this is now.
Well, there is that. The people, we had several people saying, well, we wish it was further south, but then the people in the south say, in the north, so I wish it was further north.
Yeah.
Now, last year was particularly difficult because, I say, we couldn't get here. We then negotiated with the East of England Showground in Peterborough. We got a date for that, which was acceptable to all. And then Peterborough, the management of the East of England Showground, sold out for housing development. So
doesn't exist anymore.
We got notice on the 1st of from the 1st of July. We got notice about April. There would be no further events, and we were in September, so we got thrown away.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it took a while to get our deposit back. We did get it back, but it was too late to organise anything else.
So this is the first event since that cancellation?
It is.
Well, you've come back with a bang, is what I would say, because it's been fairly crowded.
Yeah.
Okay, we're sitting, it's Saturday afternoon, and Friday always seems to be more busy than Saturday, but there's still been a lot of people through, so I think it's a good sign for the future.
It's interesting, the weather effect. I can give you some stats, because this is the first year we've used electronic ticketing.
Yes.
Mainly because of it's the way of the world, and also it saves an awful lot of time when we have to pay our bank to put money into the bank. That seems iniquitous to me, but whatever.
Yeah.
So we've gone with a contractor, a big company, and there are still, according to my stats here, yesterday we scanned in 923 people who had advance booked.
Yeah.
In addition, we took cashless and cash payments, probably another 500, something like that. So 1,300 people yesterday, which is a little bit short of what we normally get, but not a big difference.
I know, because I was helping on one of the flea market stalls. When the gates actually opened for the normal entrance to come in, there was literally a wave of people coming along the road. So I think it's considering the weather, considering all the other problems, I think you've had a good, successful year this year.
We've learned very much from the electronic ticketing. It's our first attempt. We didn't know how it was going to work physically in terms of the operation. What we found was 4 people scanning the QR codes on the tickets or their phones or whatever they got the ticket on, and 2 people then handing them a wristband to prove they paid. And they came in very, very much quicker than ever was possible. We're selling them a paper ticket and taking a $5 or whatever it was. Very, very efficient it was.
Yeah. So we're moving with the times.
Well, hopefully, yes.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Okay, Ian, thank you very much for your time, and continued success, and a bigger and better one next year.
Hopeful.
ICQ.
Do you?
Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed those interviews from the National Hamfest in the UK. A little bit of fun, and you can tell from some of the presenters there, they were talking to me. We did have a bit of fun up at that rally, and I will be there again next year. All being well, and looking forward to it. So I hope you enjoyed it.
Well, I really hope that you enjoyed the final part of our report from UK Hamfest 2024. And say if you weren't able to attend, hope it gives you a wonderful flavour of what you might have missed this year. And I'm sure you'll pencil that one in your diary for next year. So say should be around about the same time next year in Newark in the Midlands in the UK. Now, as always, we'd like to thank our monthly and subscription donors that pay our way and keep us advert-free on your ICQ podcast. If you found value from today's show, please visit icqpodcast.com/donate, where the value you found in the show, turn it into a monetary figure, send it our way, and we'd really appreciate that support on our show. As always, we'd like to thank Chris, Mike Zero, Tango Charlie Hotel, Martin, Mike Zero, Sierra Golf Lima, Frank, Kilo 4, Foxtrot Mike Hotel, and Bill, Whiskey Charlie 3 Bravo, for taking part in the News Roundtable. Many thanks, James, for helping us out there and giving Martin your opinions on that section, and I really hope it stimulated lots of thoughts and debates for you on what's going on in the hobby. Right, well, that just about wraps up episode 441 of your ICQ Hamilton Radio podcast. We really wish you enjoy the hobby and have great fun over the next fortnight, and we'll catch up again in a fortnight's time with episode 442. Enjoy all. 73s.